Alright, so everybody's asked me 1,000 times how to cook my enchiladas. So the kids had a great idea today that we are going to videotape making my enchiladas. So when I'm dead and buried and worm food, you guys will still know how to make my yummy enchiladas. And this video is of course brought to you by
Montague Masterminds!
Montague Masterminds in conjunction with My Cool Nerds, the coolest nerds in town at mycoolnerds.com. Okay, so the first part about the best enchiladas in the world is really good ingredients. So you need the following ingredients to make delicious enchiladas. Number one, you need tortillas. Tortillas are really important. And
so you have tortillas, really.
I usually like to get homemade tortillas. I didn't this time because we just thought about making my world famous enchiladas last night. So I usually go to a Spanish grocery store and get homemade tortillas. I like the one in Rose Park called Supermercado. Works really good. Craig Staley owns it and he's a stud. Also, the one thing that's nice about going to a Spanish grocery store is my enchiladas require tomatillos. And you can't get enough tomatillos usually at a white cracker, white blood American store. You have to get lots of tomatillos. So you usually have to go to a Spanish store to get the tomatillos. The other items you'll need is you'll just need fresh cloves of garlic, some white onion, some jalapenos, some cilantro. Make sure when you're choosing the cilantro, I worked in the produce department for Harmon's for way too many years. And cilantro often sits on the shelf for a long time. So when you're picking out your cilantro, make sure you get the kind that doesn't have mold built into the middle of it, because often there's a lot of mold inside the middle. I get green onions. You need olive oil. You need mozzarella. You need bouillon. I like the Weiler's bouillon. I think it works really well. And you need sour cream. I get some limes, just to let people put limes on it if they want, but I don't put limes in the recipe because the acidity of it can be really harsh. So you start out with the tomatillos. Tomatillos are where people usually go wrong. The tomatillos you have to make sure are a deep green in color. So this tomatillo is a very good tomatillo. It's really nice and green. Sometimes they're more of a whitish color, and that means that they're not that good. And so you only want to use the green ones. Tomatillos come in a dry skin like this. And the dry skin, a lot of people don't understand what to do with the tomatillo. So the tomatillos, what you have to do is you have to break off the stem. You pull the skin back and break the stem off. And then I leave them in the sink, because I'll explain in a minute. This one, for example, is kind of white, so it's still going to be okay, but if they're pure white, that means they're not ripe. And one that's not ripe will be bad. So sometimes you'll find stuff inside of them that's very normal, because you can never see until you open them up what they are. To break them off, a lot of times what I do is when I open up the skin, I pinch it really hard and then I spin it off, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to get off. So then, after you've gone through and taken the dry skin off all the tomatillos, then you have to wash them, and this is where most people mess up cooking with tomatillos. By the way, I have the most handsome assistant right now in the world. She's such a good-looking daughter. This is Savannah Montague, the future of the enchilada making in this household. One of the big downsides to using tomatillos that people don't realize is if they don't wash them, there's a really gross, pasty goop on the outside of the tomatillo that has to be washed off. So this is a bad tomatillo. We started washing them and it wasn't good. I'll bring it right up to the camera. So it's a bad one. It's all white. It's hardly green at all. And it's been frozen inside. You can see that it got froze a little bit. So you got to be careful when you're using the tomatillos that you throw away the bad ones. So we'll pause for a second and come back to you guys in just a minute once we're done with the most tedious process of making my world famous enchilada. So we take this skin off when I turn on the water, you have to vigorously really scrub. And I scrub and scrub and scrub and just play with it and work it in my hands till I can feel that it's all smooth now and it feels like a normal tomato. I no longer feel that sticky paste on the outside of it. Here's another bad tomatillo. Some of them will get pieces like that down in them. And you got to make sure those are the rancid parts of the tomatillo, so you got to be careful not to use those kinds. So we're going to take these and start them boiling. With tomatillos, you have to be very careful because if they split open, all of the meaty parts that taste good fall out. One other thing with tomatillos, the reason I said twist them, I noticed when I was cleaning them off, oftentimes there's stem left over on the tomatillo. You got to get that off because the stem tastes really bad. It's really tart. All right, so the other part of cooking that's important is the jalapenos. So you have to clean the jalapenos just like you did the other, but I snapped the stems off just like I did the tomatillos, and that one, for example, didn't break off, so I'm gonna have to go back and cut it. But you have to get all of the stem off of the jalapeno, and so I'm gonna have my amazing assistant wash these off as I snap the stems off of them. So sometimes if the stems don't come off, I get a knife and then I cut the stem out. So we're done snapping off all the stems. We've washed the jalapenos. One thing that's really important to do when you're making them is you have to cook three main items. You have to cook the jalapenos, you have to cook the chicken, and you have to cook the tomatillos. The tomatillos take a lot less time to cook than the jalapenos. The jalapenos take a lot longer. So I make sure and cook them in different pans. When on both of them, you'll know they're done cooking when they start to split. The tomatillos can be a little bit undercooked, so it's not a big deal. The jalapenos need to be fully cooked so they can split more, and then we'll move on to the other ingredients. Okay, so you're going to need a couple things I forgot on the recipe or on the ingredient list. You're going to need salt, and you're going to need chicken. So I've got 8 chicken breasts in here, boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and I put stuff into the chicken. So I have some white onion that we're going to use for later as well. And then I just break up a little bit of white onion and I put it in the with all of the chicken. And then I also add a bunch of garlic into it. So garlic is a lot of fun to break into. So I just put in a few cloves of garlic. I snap the garlic off of the base, get all the base off of it. Rest. Cut off the top, cut off the bottom, and peel out the rest. And then I cut it up just a little bit when I put it in with the chicken. That's just to add a little bit of flavor to the chicken. Cut the bottom, cut the top. Usually that's enough that it takes all the skin off. And I add that to the chicken. And then in cooking the chicken, you don't want to overcook it because obviously that makes dry chicken, then that's gross. The other thing that I add to the chicken is I add a bunch of salt. That makes it saltier, which obviously gives it more taste. Then it also increases the temperature that the water is cooking at, so it cooks it quicker. All right. Okay, while I have, so I've got my chicken cooking, I've got my tomatillos cooking, and I have my jalapenos cooking. The tomatillos are probably going to take the longest of any of that. They actually, no, I'm sorry, the tomatillos take the quickest, the chicken will take the longest, and then the jalapenos are pretty long as well. So while that's cooking, let's talk about the rest of the ingredients. So the cilantro is really important. The best tasting part of the cilantro is the part that's not so stocky. So I cut off all of the bottom of the cilantro and just save the nice bushy part. And then I open it up and look through it, and I make sure that there's no rotten pieces in there. So I usually gauge it where I just cut it off right above where the twist tie is. And then we also have green onions. So I take the elastics off the green onions. And then I cut all the root part of the bottom of the green onion. And then the most flavorful part of the green onion is down in the white area. So I cut off most of the green top. And then I go through them and make sure that there's no rotten pieces, because they can have rotten stuff as well. You won't need a ton of this. So for our family, I've got 4 stalks of green, 4 bunches of green onions here. And then the last piece that is important is getting the bouillon ready, and the onions and limes. So these green onions actually have a lot of dirt in them. I'm going to have my assistant wash off a lot of that dirt. Just try and scrub them a little bit. It's okay, so we drop a little volume. Try and get them really clear out. Okay, so the white onion we add to the enchiladas just to a certain person's taste. So I actually don't put any white onion in it. I just chop it up and have it in a bowl, so if somebody wants to put white onion on, they can, to their own taste. So I will have...
My eyes are watering from here.
So I don't do a lot. Most people don't hardly use it. And you also don't want them to put a lot on it, because onion's delicious. I like onion on mine, but too much onion can really make it be an issue fast. So we'll continue chopping that up in a minute, but I just chop that up to where it's diced into a tiny, tiny dice. I got to do the same thing I did earlier with the garlic. I need garlic cloves without the skins for the sauce. Okay, so I'll finish doing this garlic in a minute. So I use these bouillon cubes. So he's got to take them out of the gold foil. So I'm going to have this assistant take them out of the gold foil. I'm going to have this assistant chop up limes for people to put. So use this knife.
Dad, do it. Assistant A and Assistant B.
Yeah, put them into quarters.
I'm Assistant A because my name starts with A.
No.
I'll cut them in half. Hey!
Yeah.
It's totally fair. Because I'm a B.
So this garlic piece has a really big rotten piece in it, so obviously you'd want to take that out.
Oh,
and the only reason that I do yeah, that's perfect. Some people like the taste of the limes, some don't. So I'll just have them out in a bowl on the table. So we've got everything done now to where we can take a break for a minute and then come back once we have all the ingredients ready and everything cooked to show you how we make this. Alright, it is time for me to show you what some of the things are looking like now. So I'm going to come over and grab the camera and show you what you're supposed to be looking for. Okay, so this is what we're hunting for. All of these, you can see this coloration difference right here. Then you can tell they're all cooked once they've gone that kind of uglier color of green. And then on these jalapenos, you can see this line down in here that it's split open. It looked a lot more pronounced when it was boiling, but that's what we're looking for there. And when you know the tomatillos and the jalapenos are cooked.
What's up?
Alright, so now we're going to show what to do once everything is cooked. So, of course, using a blend tech. I wish I would have come up with the Will It Blend. Coolest marketing idea ever. So I have just a little spoon that has holes in the bottom, so I'm not pulling the water out. I'm just getting just the tomatillo because I don't want any extra juice in there. I just want the juice from the tomatillo. And I'm going to fill the blender to about 2/3 full with tomatillos. And when it's 2/3 full, then we're going to add a bunch of other ingredients.
The Papa Enchilada.
Okay, so I have the tomatillos. I add 2 cubes of bouillon per thing of blender. And I don't know how big of a blender this is, to tell you. The top of the line right here says 1,000 milliliters, so it has much more than that. So I put in 2 cubes of bouillon, and then I add salt.
Where's the top?
And the salt's really hard because I just kind of put in the salt like that. I don't know how much salt it is. I kind of salt it to taste. I start out with just a little bit of salt, then I'll add much more later. I put in 2 medium cloves of garlic. I only put in a very small amount of green onion. I don't put in tons of green onion. And then I put in some cilantro. And for people like Lance Coverhans that don't like cilantro, they haven't figured out in life that one of the greatest flavors God has given us is cilantro.
Yes, it is.
Oh, we're missing the most important part, of course. I put in 2, that's hot. I put in 2 jalapenos per batch. Got everything, and then we blend. And I don't purify it completely.
Did you get that?
Yep, I just make sure it's just blended up really good. And then when it's done, I look at it, and this one is still kind of a really faint green. I'll bring it over and show you. That color is kind of too faint green. I want it to be a little bit darker than that. And I know I'm missing some cilantro because it's not dark enough yet. So I add a little cilantro to keep getting it darker.
I can smell it. Smells so good.
Now you can see it's a lot greener. And so I just make it to where it's kind of a good deep green color. You're a good assistant. We decided that my assistants are Grace, Ava, and Savannah.
That's our
We'll call it Assistant S, Assistant G, and Assistant A. Or their nickname is my gas assistants. Because Ava is very flatulent. Then
Don't call me gas.
I'm going to need this bowl for the sauce. So Savannah, can you grab me that bowl right there? I can put the rest of the tomatillos in. Yeah. So I'm going to put, no, I don't need a strainer. I'm just going to straighten them with this. So I'm going to put the rest of my tomatillos in here because I don't think we have another big pot clean. Usually when I cook these, I have a huge kettle we cook the tomatillos in when I make a big batch. But I need this pot 4.
Just for filling.
No, I need this pot because you need to put the sauce back on the burner and keep it warm. Because we put when we build the enchiladas, the sauce comes right out of the boiling kettle when we build the enchiladas. Nope. It's the smell of the smell of these.
Oh, because those smell.
Yep. Okay. So I got out all my tomatillos. Excuse me.
That's hot.
Watch out, Gracie.
That water's really hot. Come here.
Watch out, Grace.
Hi.
So I'm going to use this.
Too.
Stop, please. So I'm going to use this pot to keep it all warm. But I've got to test the taste of it first. It's hard to test because I'm also going to stop my chicken. My chicken's done. It's hard to test when it's like this right now because it's super hot. So you have to blow it down quite a bit. And I'm testing for a bunch of stuff right now. I'm testing to make sure it's not too hot. Testing to make sure it has the right flavor. It's lacking a little bit of flavor. So I'm going to start by adding the salt. I think I didn't put enough salt in. So I'm going to add probably about a tablespoon more salt. Maybe not a tablespoon, maybe a teaspoon extra salt. Then I'm going to blend it and see if it tastes better. Gracie's a good helper on that. I'm going to see, and what's nice, when you build it in multiple stages like this, I'm going to have a few batches. If one's too salty or too hot, then you can just take away ingredients from the next blender full of stuff. Now that tastes really good. I put in a little too much salt. So I'll go light on the salt in the next batch. So then I put it in that pot, because that's where we're going to use it. And then I take all of these tomatillos. We have just enough for one more batch.
That would be right that way.
I'm going to add 2 bouillons. 2 garlics, a couple, 3, not whole bunches, but just 3 single stalks of cilantro, green onions, a good handful of cilantro, 2 jalapenos, and I might add a 3rd once we see how hot this turns out, because that other batch was not that hot at all. And like I said, I'm going to add just a little bit of salt because I think that other one got a little too salty. So I've only put about a teaspoon of salt in that whole thing. Probably even less than a teaspoon.
Then do I do speed?
Then, yep, you just press that button 3 times. So that one needs just a little more green to it. We're going to put another bunch of cilantro in there.
I'm gonna get some down.
I felt like that one was mostly stocky. I like leaves the most.
Me too. Can I eat some? Can I eat some?
So I'm just adding some leaf to it. That first batch was just a hair tart, and I know that I got a lot of stocky stuff because that's tart. Okay, so now I'm going to taste it. I'm going to want this one just to be light on the salt, because once I mix it with the other, it should be perfect. Just check on it, don't taste it. perfect.
Got something hanging there. There you go. Got it.
Got a piece of tomatillo.
Mm-hmm.
With a little bit extra salt. Even worse. Okay, so I'm gonna pour this. So I have my have all my sauce boiling over here. I'm gonna put it all in there, and I've just got it on really low, just barely on simmer, just to keep it warm until it's time to do the rest. So I'm going to pull the chicken out of the pot, and then we're going to shred the chicken. And once we have the chicken shredded, then it's time to make enchiladas. So we're going to pause for a minute, and then we'll come back. Okay, so do that again, Grace.
No.
Okay, so now we just got to shred the chicken. So I just take the chicken and put it in really small pieces, shred it up. It'll go inside of the enchiladas. And I bet my assistant, it starts with an S, can come to a lot of this shredding. So just hold it like that, Sav.
I just bumped the camera.
That's fine.
Daddy,
hold it like that.
Daddy, do you get your assistant Gia job?
I'll get my assistant Gia job.
What is it? Shred these more?
No, those are good and shredded. They're all done and shredded. So we just shred that chicken up really good so that when it's done, it's just all shredded up into small pieces so that it's ready to go into the enchiladas. We'll be back in a second. Okay, so now it's time to build the enchiladas. To build them, I've got olive oil in a pan. By the way, that's another ingredient you need. I didn't tell you that originally. Olive oil. I've got the sauce over here, and this one just simmering, just barely boiling. I have mozzarella. I have the shredded chicken. Then I have onions if people want it in that. And then we'll just put the limes on the table if people want limes. So we take out a tortilla. We put it in the olive oil just for a second, just to let it boil like that and soften up. I usually do 2 per person. The olive oil also adds a really good taste to it, so I get the tortillas on the plate, spread out. We add some chicken into it. We add a little cheese inside. We add some of the sauce inside. And then we fold them, just roll them up. And then we take and put some more cheese on top. And then we put a bunch of the sauce on the top. Open that up for me. My assistant's going to open up the sour cream. Then once we get all that on there, a little bit more. Got a kid that looks like he's hungry for it. Will you grab me a back off Florida? Will you grab me a fork, please? We have the sour cream. We add a little sour cream to it, depending upon how much the person likes. And then, if they want onions, we can throw some onions on there. Some people don't like them, some do. And voila, put some lime on if you want it. The best enchiladas on the planet. That's a wrap.